All right, let's get into a story that, well, it pretty much rewrites a key chapter of history that we all thought we knew. We're talking about a thousand-year-old mystery, something only whispered about in ancient legends, that was finally solved on the remote, windswept coast of Canada.
So, who really discovered America? I mean, we all learned the answer in school, right? Christopher Columbus, 1492. Simple. But here's the thing. What if I told you that the first Europeans actually made landfall in the Americas almost 500 years before Columbus was even born? The proof was literally hiding in plain sight.
So where did this wild idea even come from? Well, for centuries, the only breadcrumbs we had were these incredible epic stories from Iceland, known as the Vinland Sagas. Written down way back in the 13th century, they told these amazing tales of Viking explorers, like the famous Leif Erikson, who supposedly sailed west from Greenland and stumbled upon a vast new continent. These old texts painted a picture of an absolute paradise, a land of unbelievable riches they called Vinland. But, for most of history, scholars just kind of shrugged it off. I mean, they were thrilling adventure stories for sure, but probably just myths. A fantasy land across the sea, right? And yet, the idea just wouldn't completely die. In fact, this so-called mythical land started popping up on real maps, just like this one from 1570. If you look closely, right there it says the promontory of Vinland, listed like any other real place. The question just kept lingering. Could it actually be real? Okay, so let's fast forward to the 20th century, because this is where our heroes enter the story. A Norwegian explorer named Helge Ingstad and his wife, an archaeologist named Anne Steen Ingstad. They didn't think Vinland was a myth at all. They were absolutely convinced the sagas were basically historical documents, and they pretty much dedicated their lives to proving it. So how'd they crack a case that had been cold for centuries? Well, it all came down to a single word. See, for years, everyone just assumed Vinland meant wineland, which had people searching all along the coasts for wild grapes. But the Ingstads had this radical new idea. What if an Old Norse meaning of vin wasn't wine, but meadow, meadowland? That simple little tweak completely changed the game, shifting the entire search hundreds of miles north. So, armed with this game-changing new theory, the Ingstads sailed along the coast of Newfoundland back in 1960. They were hunting for a spot that fit the new description, a grassy, meadow-like area that looked like it could have hosted an ancient settlement.
And you know how they found it? Not with some fancy technology, but by talking to the people who lived there. A local fisherman, George Decker, heard what they were looking for and said, "Hey, you should check out these strange, overgrown mounds over here." The locals had a simple name for it: the Old Indian Camp. And this is what they saw. Yeah, it doesn't really look like much, does it? Just these gentle, grassy bumps on the landscape. And when you look at it, you can totally understand why for 1,000 years, nobody realized what was hiding just beneath their feet. But then they started digging. And underneath those humble mounds, they found it. The unmistakable foundations of turf-walled, Viking-style longhouses. Just like that, the myth of Vinland became a real, tangible archaeological fact. Okay, so finding the buildings was one thing, but they needed hard, definitive proof of who actually built them. So let's put on our archaeology hats for a minute and look at what they pulled out of the ground, because the artifacts themselves tell an absolutely incredible story of what life was like here 1,000 years ago. Right away, the layout of the place told them a lot. They uncovered 8 separate buildings, big halls for living, smaller huts, workshops for fixing boats, and even a forge for making iron. This wasn't just some rough campsite. This was a sophisticated, well-planned base camp, a bold, new foothold on a brand new continent. And inside those buildings, that's where they found the smoking gun. Over 800 artifacts. We're talking things like this bronze cloak pin, iron rivets from a ship, a special stone for sharpening blades. This was stuff that left no doubt. These were not from any local indigenous group. They were unquestionably Norse. And among all that stuff, they found 2 small but incredibly important items: a piece of a spindle and a needle made of bone. Now, these were the tools used for spinning wool and mending clothes, work that was done by women in Norse society. And their presence proved something huge. This wasn't just a camp for a bunch of male explorers. This was a settlement for families. But maybe the wildest clue of all was a handful of butternuts. Now, butternuts are a type of walnut, and they do not grow anywhere near aux Meadows. In fact, the closest place you can find them is hundreds and hundreds of miles to the south. This one little food item proves that the Norse weren't just staying put, they were using this place as a base to explore even deeper into North America.
So let's just zoom out for a second and really think about the big picture here. The discovery of this one small, short-lived settlement on the tip of Newfoundland completely blew up our understanding of world history and human migration.
For decades, we knew the site was around 1,000 years old. But check this out. A really recent study from just 2021 used evidence from cosmic rays trapped in tree rings to date the settlement with unbelievable precision. We now know that Vikings were cutting down trees at this very spot in the exact year 1021. And when you lay it all out on a timeline like this, it really puts it all into perspective. You see thousands of years of Indigenous history, then boom, the Norse arrive in 1021. And then, look at that gap. Almost 500 years of nothing until Columbus shows up in 1492. aux Meadows isn't just some little footnote, it's the real first chapter of Europeans in the Americas. And that's what makes this place so unbelievably important. To this day, even after decades of searching, aux Meadows is still the one and the only confirmed, undisputed Viking site ever found in all of North America. It is totally unique. Because of its incredible world-changing importance, the site is now protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a place where you can actually go and stand and witness the moment that two worlds, which had been separate for thousands of years, finally made contact. And all of this leaves us with one last, really tantalizing question. For 1,000 years, the proof was sitting right there, just dismissed as an old Indian camp. It really makes you wonder, if this one piece of a legendary saga turned out to be true, what other huge secrets might still be buried out there, just waiting for someone to look at history in a new way?